presentation is entitled What Self-Regulation Research Tells Us About the Writing Process, and our speaker is Susan Day. Susan is a writer, a licensed psychologist, and a visiting professor of educational psychology at the University of Houston, where she specializes in research methodology and assists graduate students with experimental design and data analysis. She is also a private educational consultant. Before receiving her doctorate in counseling psychology, she was a professor of English at Illinois State University for 20 years. Her specialties in English studies are writing and pedagogy, and she has done research on the practices of dissertation writers and the identity development of creative writers. She is also the author or co-author of more than a dozen textbooks in rhetoric, grammar, and literature, notably Literature in the Writing Process, now in its 10th edition, and the Simon & Schuster Short Prose Reader. In this presentation, she'll summarize classic and recent research findings about what self-regulation is, what promotes it, and what impairs it, and will then turn her attention to a discussion of how these findings can be useful to the classroom instructor. Susan, are you ready to go?
Class discussion while I'm presenting, or will all the discussion be at the end?
It'll all be at the end, unless you want to pause. And if you want to pause at any point to take questions, we can definitely do that.
Okay, should I just call on you at that time?
Yep, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess everybody can see this is a bizarre experience to have no audience.
I know, it's very strange. But
Okay.
we're seeing you and hearing you just fine.
Okay, do you see this slide that has at least 3 very old-fashioned things on it?
Yes.
It should have a person in a suit, for one thing, a pen, and a bunch of paper. And I didn't even realize when I chose this slide how old-fashioned it actually is. But I think that the feeling that is expressed in it is a very common one. So here's my title, Self-Regulation Research. And first I'm going to talk in general about why...
now that our panel has started, the little default.
All right.
Hey, I'll email Amy and ask her, Amy Berger, the one who's putting it on.
Okay, can you see? Should I continue? Okay. So, should I go on?
Oh gosh. I think it's one of our previous speakers is somehow still connected to the.
Oh no, he's breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
You should be better now.
Okay.
Should I go on?
Yes, please. I'm so sorry, Susie. Thank you.
Okay, this is about the importance of computer regulation, but my talk is about self-regulation and very little to do with computers. In the broader sense, the lack of self-regulation is the source, of course, of very many personal and social problems. Many people see addictions as failures of willpower, and self-regulation in some ways is what we usually call willpower. It's a controversial way to describe it. Of course, problematic consequences of risky sexual behavior are usually self-regulation failures. Violence and aggression toward other people are usually not planned. They're usually matters of losing control of oneself. And a lot of criminality, most criminality happens when a person is not actually regulating themselves very well. Now, let's look at it, though, in terms of writing, since that's what we're here for. The importance of self-regulation to writing is that the lack of it causes a whole lot of the different problems we see among our students. And these will be really familiar to you. The biggie, procrastination. The inability to actually sit down and do it, and making a lot of excuses, and basically not getting around to it. And we see it, of course, in ourselves as well as in our students. And it's something that I've struggled with myself, and I have never interviewed a writer in my long life of interviewing writers. I've never interviewed a writer who thought that they were not a procrastinator. Everyone thinks they are, in different degrees. Our students also suffer from distraction while they're trying to write. They can't keep their focus on what they're doing. Some of it is caused by the lack of control over their setting, which I'm going to talk about later. But anyway, they haven't regulated things properly. Another thing we see them do is make pointless efforts even though they seem to be engaged in the process of writing. We see them doing things like endless outlining or endless research at the library or online library, which I actually call procrastination in the form of activity. And we see them tear up drafts, although now they don't tear them up. But we see them delete drafts that actually they should have saved. And finally, to go along with procrastination, they engage in avoidance behaviors by doing other things, visiting friends in other towns and avoiding places where they could actually work and all kinds of things like that. And you've all seen these, and you could probably think to yourself and list a whole lot more. There are a couple major theories of self-regulation in the psychological world, and they're contradictory. They appear contradictory. One of them says that self-regulation is a resource, like a gas tank full of gas, and when you are out of gas, just like we say, you are actually depleted of this resource and there is no more, like the woman exhausted in the chair there. The other theory of regulation is a little bit opposite because it says that self-regulation is like a muscle and that as we use it more and more, it actually gets stronger and that it grows over time and eventually it becomes automatized so that people who self-regulate on a regular basis don't have any trouble with it or have very little trouble with it because they've built up that muscle, just like this guy who's running on a treadmill is building up his endurance, and next time he gets on the treadmill it'll be a little bit easier. The importance of these two seemingly contradictory theories is that what they predict about after one effort what is going to happen at the next effort. The lady in the chair, obviously, the next effort is not going to work. She's out of gas. The guy on the treadmill, his next effort, he's going to be better. So experimenters have tried to figure out ways to test these theories of self-regulation. And I'm going to tell you about 5 of those experiments that I think are interesting. You all probably recognize this scene from Psycho, terrifying scene. In the experiment, people were asked to watch a very disturbing film, and during the film they were asked to regulate their emotional expression. So they either had to suppress their shock and screaming, or they had to really exaggerate them. Then after that, they were given a task where they had to squeeze a hand grip, like an exercise hand grip, and it was calibrated how hard they could squeeze. And the people who had to regulate their emotions, it actually drained them physically, and they were less able to squeeze the hand grip. So that's an action where emotional suppression caused physical lack of strength. Now, look at this darling little white bear. In the next type of experiment, experimenters would show people pictures like this of these adorable white bears, or they just have images of them in their minds. And then they'd be told to not think about that white bear for 5 minutes, which, if you tried to do it, it would be very difficult to suppress the thoughts of a white bear, and there's lots of white bear experiments that show this. After 5 minutes of this, the people were less able to continue on a puzzle task that was fairly difficult. They gave up very easily in comparison with people who had not had to suppress thoughts. So this is a connection between suppressing thoughts, cognition, and persistence on a task. So another connection between two resources that seem like they might be different. Okay, yum. Now, don't try not to think about these cookies. But in the experiment, what happened was that people were put in a room with a stack of fresh-made chocolate chip cookies, and they were either told they could have some, or another group was told that they had to resist eating the cookies. And the group that had to resist eating the cookies, as you can imagine, they could not put together puzzles later. And again, two things that you don't really think that are related, but seem to draw on the same resource, because the resistance of the cookies drained their resources on putting together puzzles later. On this one, this is another white bear one. People who suppressed thoughts of a white bear and then were showed a comedy and told to not laugh at the comedy. If they tried to suppress thoughts later, they had trouble suppressing their emotions. They had trouble suppressing laughter. So again, a kind of a distant set of skills or abilities. We're still drawing from the same resource. Finally, here's a person who's getting ready to write her English paper. We know that most breakdowns in self-control happen at the end of the day. And if you think about your breakdowns in self-control, that is exactly when they happen. Being tired or under stress is associated with breakdown in self-control. And we see it with dieters breaking their diets, people beginning to smoke, people drinking too much, slacking off, and generally procrastinating, and the things that we see in our students as far as writing. These experiments all certainly support the resource depletion theory in that they say somehow there's like one gas tank and it's used for emotional, behavioral, and cognitive reasons, and being drained in one way drains you in the other way. So when we think about what time our students usually get started on their papers, we know that probably it's at the end of the day or in the middle of the night even. Exactly, if you look at the experimental evidence, exactly the wrong time that they should be doing it, because their self-regulation is actually at an F or at a low. And this is certainly one thing that I'm going to talk about, some ways that we can encourage our students to not do this or to choose a better time. Now, on the other hand, there's some evidence on the other side of the other theory too, the muscle building theory. Some students were given some self-control exercises to do for 2 weeks. They had to do it every day. And the exercises were to improve your posture, like to remember to stand up straight and put your shoulders back, or to notice positive moments during your day. And this is a really common thing that we do with depressed people, try to teach them to notice positive moments. Well, just 2 weeks of those self-control exercises improved their resistance to depletion in those puzzle tests and the emotional control tests and things like that. So this seems to say that actually exercising the self-control did make the muscle stronger. We also know that if you have pleasant emotions, it helps reverse the effects of self-control depletion, which again, having pleasant or negative emotions, if you're thinking of the gas tank analogy, it wouldn't affect it at all. But it does affect it. So a pleasant surroundings, pleasant thoughts and images might help a person find resources of self-control that they didn't think they had. And we all know that higher rewards help people find resources within them that they didn't know they had. And some of the experiments are things like you solve a puzzle, and you finally get to a puzzle that you give up on. And then the experimenter says, would you persist if I gave you $10? Would you persist if I gave you $300? Would you persist if I gave you $1,000? And sure enough, people somehow find within them new resources of self-regulation, and they're able to do it. And we also know from things like marathon running that when people get close to the end, close to the completion, they somehow get some extra stuff in their gas tank. So these seem to be on the side of developing a muscle through exercising it. So in a way, both of these theories of self-regulation can help inform our attempts to co-regulate our students' behaviors and emotions and control over themselves. And one important possibility that makes people do these sorts of things is our power to influence their beliefs, because belief systems underlie a whole bunch of this. So here's this little guy. He's about to take a test. I like this picture because it really shows he could be thinking in two different ways. He could be thinking, all right, I'm ready for this test. Or he could be thinking, I wish I was anywhere else. I'm no good at this, and I hate this. And these two points of view represent two beliefs about the self that usually people don't know they hold. They're usually implicit. You go around believing it without knowing it. An incremental theory is a belief that human attributes can be improved and developed. And so this is a talent theory, this is a learning theory, a skill building theory, an effort theory. On the other hand are people who believe an entity theory, which is that human attributes are fixed or invariant. Like some people think about intelligence, a lot of people think about musical talent and things like that. And which one you believe in has a lot to do with the links between your belief system, your actions, thoughts, and feelings, and your goal achievement. And there's a lot of research about this, and it's research that we can make use of in working with our students. The interesting thing about these beliefs about the self is that all of us have one. They have questionnaires, and we can find out what yours are. And they don't seem to be related to intelligence or education or personality traits or self-esteem or some of the things you might think that they were related to, whether you had a talent theory or a learning theory about people. And people seem to be split about half and half between which one they generally hold. And of course, you can hold different ones in different domains. So, for example, you might have an entity theory about being able to play the violin, and you might have an incremental theory about learning to do the foxtrot. And also, the important thing is that they can be changed. It very much influences your self-regulatory processes, which one you do. Students who endorse an entity theory, this is the talent theory, it orients them when they're engaged in something, it orients them toward measurement of their ability, accurate measurement of their ability, and then giving up or withdrawing effort if the outcome is not good, if it turns out that this measured ability is not very good. People with incremental theories, students with incremental theories, orient themselves toward the task. They orient themselves toward challenging tasks and promoting their skills and using effort to overcome difficulties. Now, unfortunately, our students often hold entity theories about writing, which actually is very much based on an incremental theory, as we their teachers know. So this is something that we can change. just a second, I'm having trouble getting to my next slide. This is a fancy diagram. You have over on one side incremental beliefs and all the different pathways that they go through to goal achievement. This is based on about 13,000 students, different experiments put together. So for example, incremental beliefs lead to mastery strategies such as practice and skill building and boosts. Starting easy and getting to harder things. They do not lead to helpless strategies such as giving up and plagiarism and things like that, and they have the same relationship that you would expect to goal achievement. So all of these different things are the things that go in between, things that operate between beliefs and achievement. And I'll send you this slide later. It's too much to talk about right now. But it's as you can see, it's a very complex relationship. Luckily, intervention can change beliefs. It can change people from entity theorists into incremental theorists. And I'll give you a couple of examples. This example, students were taken when they were making the transition from 6th to 7th grade. They gave them 8 25-minute periods, 1 per week. Everyone got it, but the two groups were different only in 2 of the sessions. 6 of the sessions were exactly the same. They were study skills training. The 2 of the sessions for incremental belief were things where they really encouraged the students to think incrementally, like they discussed things that they used to be bad at and now they're good at, and how they changed from being bad at it to good at it, and things that they learned and the steps that they took to learning them, just thinking of different examples to get them to become incrementalists. The results were really kind of outstanding. Those students did better. Let's see, I have it written down here. They showed improvement in grades, conscientious, and effort in the classroom, and that was not just that year, but all the way through the 2 years of junior high. That half of the students were ahead of the other half in these things. The people who did this, Carol Dweck is one of the creators of this experiment. They have made it into a computer-based workshop for students, and there's materials for teachers as well. It's called Brainology. Here's the URL. Of course, they sell it. It can cost like $10 a student, but there's also a lot of limited access materials for you as a teacher to look at, and kind of to help you learn. So you might want to check that out. Also, the way that you talk to your students or write on their paper makes a difference. Beliefs are learned from the kind of praise that's given. So praise for intelligence gives people challenge avoidant, believe it or not, behavior. Kind of like, ooh, I better not mess with this. This is good.
Susie, I think we lost you. Let's see. Jean-Pierre, are you on there? Can you help us get Susie's audio back?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Thank you.
We have Skinner's advice, which goes right along with these modern experimental points of view on self-regulation. You know that he was an expert on the management of behavior, and a lot of people think of him as, teaching pigeons to peck. But actually, he did a lot of work on human self-regulation and regulation as well. And he wrote an excellent essay called How to Discover What You Have to Say, a lecture to students. And it was about self-regulation and writing. Let me just go over quickly his points. One point is to look at it as though you were going to play a piano concerto tomorrow and prepare for writing in the same way. And this is definitely a different point of view than we saw earlier with the woman sitting in bed with the cup of coffee and the cigarette about ready to do her English paper. She's obviously not preparing to play a piano concerto or anything like it. Like a person who's going to play a piano concerto, V.F. Skinner said you had to focus on good physical condition and rest. And often our students do not do their writing when they're in these states of good physical condition and rest. They're usually in bad physical condition and they're tired. Skinner suggested that you fix on a time for writing rather than doing it after everything else is done, as so many of us, both professional writers and amateur writers, tend to do. But if you were practicing for a piano recital, you wouldn't do everything else and then see whether you had time to practice very much. And you should think about writing the same way, according to Skinner. The next set of things is what Skinner would call control of the stimulus control, which is in your ballpark. And that's that you construct the best possible conditions for the behavior to occur, and that makes the behavior more likely to occur. One of them is to create a pleasant, convenient, well-equipped setting. And my brother, who was a very, very good writer, he always, the night before he was going to write something, he set up his whole desk, all of his equipment. He made sure that he had all of his resource material and the pen that he liked to write with and all that stuff right there, so that in the morning it was already an inviting place rather than messy and discouraging and distracting. And that's what Skinner suggests. And I suggest this to my students too. He also suggested that everyone carry a notebook around to catch ideas on the fly. And now, of course, everybody has some kind of device that they actually could use even to catch voice notes on the fly. Because V.F. Skinner realized that even though his advice was to set aside a good time, that you were free of distractions and in a good setting, he realized that rest was not idleness, and that a lot of things happen while you're walking around and ironing your clothes and waiting for the bus, and you need to capture those things, and your students need to capture. And this one I think is kind of interesting and very Skinnerian. He encourages writers to keep records that somehow reinforce them, and he did this. And I'll tell you what he did. It's old-fashioned now, of course. He had a room devoted to writing, and he had an electric clock set up so that whenever he turned on the light in that room, the electric clock would start and stop. So in that, it was like he had a timer going on each hour. And he said that he averaged 2 hours a day. He did it in the morning. He thought everyone should do it in the morning. He averaged 50 words an hour, which is not very, doesn't sound like very much. This is 35,000 words a year, and that makes a book every 2 or 3 years, which is exactly what he produced. So he found it very reinforcing to keep these records. Now, other people might find other records more reinforcing to keep, but it goes along with be built into our English classrooms, and we do the writing process, but this is almost like thinking about the pre-writing process. And I think these could help our students to become the best writers that they can be, which begins with believing that the skill is actually learnable. And if you would like to discuss this further over email, or if you would like a list of the sources of all the experiments and various things I talked about, or the Skinner talk,
Susie, can you hear me okay? I think we're having the same audio difficulties we were having a few moments ago.
Yeah. Um, 1 second, please.
Thanks. Well, while we wait for that to get resolved, I did want to let everyone know that in about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, we should have the recordings from the conference produced and archived, and we will send an email with the link to that archive to everyone that registered. So you'll be able to access the recordings, and in many cases, we'll also be able to give you access to the PowerPoint slides themselves. So
Susan, can you hear me?
Hi there. Did everybody hear everything?
I don't think so. You were cut off the last 3 minutes or so.
Oh, shit.
Just the last 3 minutes, nothing too major, don't worry.
yeah, we lost you right around the time you put this slide up, and
Which
you
slide? Yeah.
this one, the one of the further discussion source list path model slide.
Oh my
It
gosh.
has your contact.
Oh no. You mean all the way back? Oh man.
No. We
didn't get to interventions.
No. We saw all of this. We got to the slide that has your contact information, and you made the gracious offer that people can contact you, and you were.
Well, where was it cut off then?
At that slide. That's the last slide in your presentation.
Well, that was all my slides.
Yeah, we didn't lose any of the slides. We just lost what you were saying beyond when the slide came up, and you said people can get in touch with you. And then we lost you. So.
Oh, okay. Well, good, because I was saying, what's going on? I lost you too.
All right. Well, there's a question about you had mentioned the writing process, and that this is sort of leading into this is kind of the process behind the process. But how do you coach students to think about the writing process itself? Do you kind of set that up for them as that there are multiple processes, or that there are some that you recommend? Or
yeah, is this a question from the audience?
It's really from me.
From you. On the actual writing process, of course, I have oodles of advice, and one, I really believe in writing a terrible first draft and just butching it out, and not going back and rereading and criticizing and thinking that you sound stupid and prematurely editing it. I really believe in that, and that's hard to teach some people who have a little perfectionist streak. I believe that you should write your introduction knowing that you are going to throw it all away, because it's just not going to be very good. And besides, by the time you've written your essay, you might be saying something a little different than you say in your introduction. So I even say, don't even start with the introduction. If you can feel comfortable with that, start with some point that you're making in the middle and can get comfortable. Another thing is that as you write, let's just talk about an essay, something that is 500, 750 words long. As you write it, you find your voice and you get more comfortable with the topic, and you actually, as most people would say, you actually discover what you think and what you want to say about it. And so I think that sometimes if you don't go back and while you're still warmed up, go back and rewrite the first part, you're going to have a real mismatch between the first part and the last part of the essay. And so one process, I think, is to maybe take the last part of the essay and recreate a new beginning for it. after you're all warmed up. I have I have other ones. I have when I taught writing and I got to teach in a computer classroom, I would have everyone write their essay on this screen and then take their introduction and put a bunch of spaces under it so that no one could read what came next. And then I'd have them hop from seat to seat and write down what they think is going to happen in this essay from reading the introduction.
Oh, wow.
And then people can kind of see what their introduction led people to believe about the essay, and they can check it that way. So there are a lot of more fun things you can do with computers, of course, than back when we were just writing by hand.
Oh, those are great ideas. We have a question from Sumita Roy. She has her hand raised, so Jean-Pierre's going to unmute her line. Sumita?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, this is Sumita Roy from Baton Rouge. I think it's Southern University, Baton Rouge. And I had a question. Is it possible to go back to that slide before the one showing B.F. Skinner? The one that was, I never got a chance to read it. It was on praise.
This one?
Yeah. Beliefs are learned from the kind of praise that is given, praise for intelligence, challenge, avoidance, and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Praise for effort or strategies, resilience, and the face of technology. My question is this. Because I teach in an HBCU, and because of budget cuts, we have rather huge number of students in our comp classes these days. And this is like 34 to 40 sometimes. And one of the things, because this is an HBCU, it's an open admission policy, although standards have been recently increased. One of the problems that I face is that although I try to always encourage them in trying to summarize my comments, I always ask them to do research, and then I note that they have made the effort to actually do research. But some of the essays are really going nowhere. I mean, there are just so many problems, in content, organization, grammar mechanics. So ultimately, I was looking at with great interest at your the initial slides, which were very, very apparent because for them this is something they have to do. They're not here by choice. Nobody likes writing. And then you've got to get this group of people motivated to write 4 essays in a semester. And a lot of them get very discouraged, and they come with preconceived notions. And one of the first things I do in a classroom is to make them give a little 2-minute talk by asking them, what is it that they feel about writing? And most of the hands go up by saying that they hate writing.
Yes.
Poor grade. So a lot of the time initially in the semester is spent actually breaking these preconceived notions. And I think by the end of the semester, some of them actually really like writing. But my question specifically was, how do we praise them? Given the short amount of time we have, how do we do it?
I thought about that question when I wrote this slide. I thought, well, what about all those papers that really you can't praise the efforts or the strategy? I really think that. And I thought about one thing that, especially with a huge workload, a lot of students, one thing you can make use of is peer review. Do you do that? This involves.
Really works well.
This involves letting the students read each other's papers and answer very, very specific questions about the paper that they're reading, and having it go through a couple of other students before it comes to you. A lot of times they'll write better when they know their peers are going to read it than when they think just you are going to read it.
Yes, I do it twice for each essay, and it really works well for, I would say, 50% of the class. But there are those, the non-efforts that you had mentioned in your initial slides, where people are doing these pointless efforts. I mean,
Yes.
A lot of them would just go and get really expensive paper and would spend a lot of time in the library aimlessly, really. And they think in their mind that they're really working hard, and they ultimately get very frustrated.
Yes.
It's the single act of sitting down and writing, and that is not there. And so for these group of people, this is a smaller group though, but the entire exercise of peer evaluation is also cosmetic. Ultimately.
And it makes me think about the slide that I was showing. Let's see if I can get to it. It makes me think about this one. It makes me, when I was working on this slide, I was thinking, well, what kind of self-control exercises could we do that would make our students behave better and improve their approach behaviors to writing? And I was wondering if things like writing expressively every single day for 2 weeks for like 10 minutes could somehow be like these experiments where they had people control their posture every day for 10 minutes or improve their positive thoughts every day for 2 weeks. It just made me think, I wonder if we could create some writing exercises that are really quite low stakes, like just write down something you observed today, or something, but have them do it every single day. Do the same thing as these self-control exercises do. I've never done it, but it just, when I wrote this slide, I thought about it.
Thank you so much, Susie. I think we are pretty well wrapped up in terms of
yes, I
questions.
imagine everybody's about out of steam.
It is. It's that time of the afternoon. We all need to go get a cup of coffee, right?
This is like the end of a day of self-control.
That's a good point. This was a good one to have
yes. So what are we going to look like here?
Well, thank you so much. There we are right there.
There we are.
That looks like me heading down to Starbucks right now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being with us today. As I said before, we'll send an email when the recorded sessions are archived, and we'll include the link there. And if there's anything else you need, please just, you can go ahead and post a question now, or you can email me. My email address will come up on the transition slide. And hopefully you had a great day. I know we did. And I hope to see you on a future conference. Our next conference will be scheduled for somewhere in the first couple weeks of November, so keep an eye out for notification of that. Thanks again.